Hey everybody, I am here. It is 11:59. We are going to do this. It is the first of three live shows all about leadership in coaching, specifically leadership for professional coaches in enrollment. What is leadership in the context of enrollment? So, first, I want to say it is not officially noon. So, if you're scrambling and you're like, wait a second, they said noon, she said noon, it's not noon. I'm here a whole minute early. Now it is noon. So welcome to another CFJ Coaching Success School Facebook Live show. I'm here to answer your questions. We're here to have a conversation about leadership. And I love the topic of leadership. I just this morning was co-facilitating a meeting inside of an organization about leadership. That context was a little bit different. Those were corporate executives all over the world with different kinds of responsibilities who were there looking to improve their ability as leaders. And in that meeting, we were making a distinction between what leading is, what managing is, and what coaching is. Okay. And then there's mentoring too. In this context, we're going to talk about it solely in the context of coaching and enrolling clients. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to have my other device up in case questions start coming that I'm not able to see. So welcome if you're here. Let me know if you're here. Give me a comment, give me a shout out. First, I want to talk about leadership as just something that we're all involved in every day, whether we want to be or not, right? So there's leadership. Hey, Jenna. Okay, good. All right. So now I know somebody's out there. We have contact. So thank you, Jenna. I want to talk about leadership just in general. It is something that's in our lives. Alethea, glad you're here. Shannon. All right. Um, Leadership is something that we are faced with every day. We are faced with opportunities to lead in every moment. Hey, Celine. And sometimes we take advantage of those opportunities and we answer the call to lead, or we don't. So this is something, to me, leadership in our whole lives is something we're doing and growing into every day. Some of us are doing it consciously, and some of us aren't even aware of it. And some of us are like going, no, I don't want to lead. I don't even want to lead when I have to put in my Starbucks order, right? I don't even like to have to communicate if my order is incorrect. That is something that requires leadership. And I don't even want to do that, Carolyn. So maybe you're a coach who doesn't even like correcting your Starbucks order. And if you only walk away today with the willingness to do that, that would be a win. So just consider that, as a possibility. Hey, Kyle, totally fine to post questions. I'm going to talk a little bit first, and then I'll take questions interspersed throughout. So feel free, and I'll keep an eye on it. So feel free to post a question. So some of you may be saying, but Carolyn, I don't, tell me more about leadership in enrollment. Like, what does that even mean? And it's a great question, because from the moment we begin a conversation with someone and say, would you like to come and have a conversation with me? That requires leadership, right? It's a definitive moment, whether we're at a store and we start talking with someone and they go, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a coach. What kind of coach? I coach people in their lives. I do leadership coaching. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. I need a coach. And I say, oh, tell me more. Tell me more. So that's the first thing. When someone is starting to talk with you and they go, oh gosh, wow, you're a coach? I've heard about those things. What is that? Maybe I need one. I'd want to be like, tell me more. What would make you think you need a coach? I don't want to jump right to, you should come talk with me. That's what I do. I do it all day long. I want to slow down. So first step is we are leading ourselves in every moment, right? Whether we're aware of it or not. So when we're connecting with someone, we are leading ourselves. And one of the big opportunities for coaches is to slow down. in connecting, to be like, oh, really? I'm curious, what would make you say that you think you need a coach? Sometimes I like to say that to people as if it's the most like ridiculous thing I've ever heard, right? Like, really? Why would you think that? Because the message I want to send is I'm not looking for anything over here. I'm all good. So my intention is to create a space where they share. That's another aspect of our leadership, right? It's like that's part of our job. We are leading ourselves in each moment. Now, some of us are more experienced, like the fantastic Sasha, um, who has been coaching for a long time, right? But she just said, great reminder. But even when we're more seasoned, right? Like we can sometimes jump the gun. We can sometimes get excited about someone. And we're one of the biggest tools, I think, and the biggest reminders I would give you is start leading yourself in slowing down. Start taking responsibility for your leading yourself and saying, Carolyn, go a little slower here. Another human being in front of us. Let's just connect. Let's just find out more about them and discover them a little bit. So leading ourselves is critical in coaching and in enrollment specifically. We had a coach in the school last year. So anyone who's brand new to this, who doesn't know. So the reason I do these because I want to serve coaches, and I have a school. It's called the CFJ Coaching Success School, and it runs once a year, every January through June. There are people in the chat who have been at the school. Kyle is back for his second time. Sasha, I think, did it twice. Tammy's back for her second time. There's no requirement to know about the school to come to these Facebook Lives and use them and get value and say, see you later. However, I was coached last time that I needed to make sure I articulated who the heck I am and why I'm here. So I have a school. I've been a coach for over 15 years. I'm a graduate of the University of Santa Monica. I have a master's in spiritual psychology. My coaching career began in a teeny tiny way. I coached 2 people pro bono as part of a project for part of my USM education, and I kind of liked it. And I thought, this is kind of cool. This is an arena where I could serve people and make a difference. And that's where it grew from. And then I started coaching a little bit more on the side as a part-time job, making a little bit of extra money as I worked at the University of Santa Monica as the director of admissions and marketing. And I met the incredible Steve Chandler, who became my coach. He's been my coach for way longer than either of us want to admit. I think I'm his longest running client. I own that. And then I started coaching coaches with my beloved business partner, Michelle Bauman, who passed away about 6 years ago. And Michelle was coached by Steve, and we started running groups for women. And then we started coaching coaches. And then we did all kinds of things. And long story short, Michelle and I coached many coaches. And then Michelle passed away. And we were teaching the soul-centered professional coaching program at the University of Santa Monica. And I did that for 3 years. And when that no longer existed, I decided, lo and behold, I was going to put my name on a school. Now, if you thought that was like in my DNA, no. Like nobody in my house was like, Carolyn, you're really amazing. You should start a school. No one. My brothers still probably don't even believe that it's real. My parents, there was lots of questions about my ability to live a good, sustainable life. They thought I'd have some admin job if I was lucky. Boy, did I surprise them. So I'm excited to share that coaching is an incredible profession that can grow with you, and it can be something that surprises you as a professional in your life. Like, I never thought I would do this. I discovered it. You're here because you discovered it. So now we can get back to the main thing we're talking about today, called leadership. Okay, so I'm going to just go right into a question, because why not? And we'll keep talking about this in self-leadership. So Kyle posted a question. I was about to start a 3rd program with a client, paid in full. Then he contacted me saying having major family trouble and he's depressed, not into talking. I said, okay, and then checked in a week or 2. Same thing. I sent a let's get on a call and hear how you're doing. No response. So your question, Kyle, is now what? Like, and I'm going to always talk about today, any question I get is going to be in the context of leadership. So as a leader, right, as a professional coach, leadership is embedded in this job. So if you didn't think it was, if you thought, oh God, I don't want to be a leader, I'm going to be a coach, I can escape having to lead, I'm so sorry. You won't. This work requires leadership. We get to lead people towards their heartfelt dreams and towards creating new relationships and all sorts of amazing things. And we get to lead ourselves. So Kyle, I'm going to pose a question back to you. Are you wondering now what? Are you wondering what did I miss a leadership opportunity? I'm curious what the question here is. So I think I could have been in better leadership when that first happened. Okay, so we're going to slow that down. I think the leadership opportunity there, Kyle, would have been to not say okay. So when he said, I'm having major family trouble, I'm depressed, not into talking, and you said okay, and then I checked in another week or two, I don't know that I would have said okay. And again, this is all contextual. So let's talk about this. This is his third program with this person. So this is a relationship Kyle has. He knows this person. There's connection and there's trust, right? Trust has been established versus with a brand new person, they don't know me from anyone. So I say, no, that's not okay. They'd be like, who are you? I don't care. This person though, Kyle, you know them. So I wonder what would have happened if you said something more like, I really hear you, and I really hear that you don't want to talk. And I'm going to suggest that we get on the phone just for 15 minutes. I'm asking, are you willing to talk even though you don't want to? I'm going to ask you, are you willing to talk even though you don't want to? So that's what I probably would have done. Again, it's hard to know because I'm not in that situation. And they still might have said, no, I don't want to talk. Then I might have said, okay, I hear you. Can we have an agreement that we're going to connect again in 2 weeks? Can we have an agreement that we're going to connect again in 2 weeks? And are you willing to tell me a little bit more about what's happening by email? Because Kyle, you have a relationship, right? You probably could have maybe, if he was open to it, done some coaching in email, right? You could have said, well, are you willing to share with me more in email if you're not willing to talk? Would that be okay with you? Right? So it's like that's where leadership is being willing to gently push the envelope with someone. Now, this is in the context of someone he's been serving for a while. I would not do that with someone brand new. That would not be a leadership move. That would just be pushy. So let me just say that outright. And some people might not like that I'm saying it. Yeah, Kyle, you could say, like, connect in 2 weeks. Let's first do an email, and I'm going to ask you again if you'd be willing to talk. If you'd be willing to talk. So thank you, Kyle. I thought that was a really good question. I think everyone can get value from that. So I'm going to talk about Brianna's question. So leadership is like me identifying myself as the one who is, this isn't an elegant way of saying it. We'll see if more elegant words come for me. I'm in charge of my work. I'm in charge of the way I'm going to navigate this conversation. We're partnering in a conversation, but I know what I'm willing to do, and I know what I'm not willing to do. And one of the best examples I could give is, many coaches, when they're new and are learning how to set up conversations, and it's awkward and bumpy and green, and you don't feel like a leader. You feel like, I'll just speak for myself. I felt like a big bozo, right? I had been a leader in my work at the University of Santa Monica. I didn't feel like a leader yet as a professional coach, but I was trying, right? I was experimenting, I was practicing. And somebody wrote back to me and they said, oh, like, I can't meet for 90 minutes. I only have 45 minutes. And I was like, that's not going to work, right? Because I know that in order for me to have any kind of depthful conversation, 90 minutes is really, because if I don't know someone, there's going to be a warming up, there's going to be a getting to know you. So I know that I'm really looking at more like maybe an hour 15 of really kind of getting into more meaty conversation. So here I was faced with this moment of they're like, I have 45 minutes. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And of course, I had a coach. So I wrote to my coach and I was like, Steve, I don't know. They only want to do 45 minutes. And Steve said, this is your work. How do you want to do your work? And I thought, I don't know. I just want to meet with someone and make money and get a client. I'm desperate. And he's like, yeah, that will be felt immediately. So where we got to was, it's okay to write back and say, let's find a time where you have 90 minutes. Because that's really where this conversation is going to be best, within a 90-minute window. So let's find a time where you have a full 90 minutes. Now, that's not obnoxious, that's not pushy, and that's not me being like, and I'm in charge and you don't get to say. And I'm still saying like, that's how we're gonna do this. That's how my work works best. I love your question, Brianna, of like, well, how do we know the distinction between being in leadership and being pushy? Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have to go over the line into pushy to go, oops, that was pushy, huh? Right? Like I had to learn a lot. Like if we all have a default, my default would have been I went over the line. There are some of you who default under the line of leadership, right? Like you have a way more to go before you're over the line, right? You might be more tentative. You might be more like shy. You might be more like, ooh. So those of you who are worried, like, and you already know yourself, like, oh yeah, like I'm way tentative. You don't have to be concerned about going over the line. Me, I was already someone who had more ease in communicating, right? I had been the director of admissions at the University of Santa Monica. I was used to having conversations. I just wasn't used to having them about coaching with me. So I went over the line into pushy. That was my learning. And I had to learn how to dial it back, how to relax, and really get like, that doesn't feel good when I went over the line into pushy. And you're going to know, Brianna. You know why? You know how you're going to know? Because people are going to go, ew, I don't like this. They won't say that, but they'll be like, yeah, I'm not available. They'll squirrel away. They'll be just like, and you'll go, what happened? And that's why whether you're in a school like mine or you have a coach, someone who can look at the communications and go, oh, right there, I think that could have felt pushy to that person. That could have felt that way. So that's the beauty, right? So I'm sorry, Brianna, that I'm not like, well, here's how you know in all situations when you are in pushiness versus leadership. For me, and I offer this, it becomes, you start to know inside, right? I start to have a feeling like, I start to learn, right? Steve showed me in his coaching and looking at my communications, I started to know like, ooh, I think that's what he's talking about. That could have felt pushy, right? Now, it's different in written communications than being in front of someone. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. And I'm going to take a question because I see Carol Little has one. I just heard some disturbing news from about a client someone who knows the client. The person who shared the news asked me to coach the client around the issue. The client hasn't brought this to our coaching sessions. I would never want to ambush a client with outside information they didn't want to share. What do I do with this information, if anything? Yeah. Okay, I have to laugh. Sasha, LOL, default under the line right here. Yeah, that's funny. I'm laughing too. All right, let's go to Carol's question. What a great question, right? So I have had this happen to me where I heard about something about a client and the client didn't bring it to the session. They never did. So Carol, I'm going to offer to you this. Like, my experience is when this has occurred for me and I just said, okay, universe, if this is relevant and it really needs to come up in the coaching, I'm going to ask for a door to be opened in our coaching. That somehow something is going to happen where I'm going to be able to ask a question that opens this door. And I'll share how it happened with my client. And maybe this will give you some ideas, Carol. And again, context of leadership. So I got this information and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? I can't just bring it. That's not appropriate. And it's a funny story. I had heard through someone I know that the client was perceived as really difficult in the workplace. And I mean difficult. People talked about him. They made up names for him. He had no idea this was going on. And yet he was coming to me to be coached in being more conscious and using, he was a USM grad. He really wanted to use those tools and skills in his life, in his work life. And here I'm getting all this information like, man, they're seen as a real kind of a jerk. And I thought, I can't do this. And so I just was like, okay, universe, I'm trusting. So he came to his next session and he started talking a little bit about work. And I said, hey, I have a question. How well do you know these people that are working with you on this team? And he said, I don't really know them that well. And I said, oh, I'm curious, like, how's your do you know how they feel about you? Like, you're the leader in this project. Do you even know? And he's like, I kind of don't. And he said, and I did have a situation the other day where I snapped at someone. And I said, you did? Tell me. And they work in entertainment, so it was on a set where they were really not kind to the person who had the cue cards. And he did something that was just, in that world, I can see why he would be talked about and thought of as a jerk. And so I said, wow, so have you brought any of the work we're doing in there to build your relationships in there? And he said, it's funny, I've thought about it over here in this other place, but not here. And I was like, oh, we got to do that. I said, you might want to ask your team how they feel about you. Like, I wonder what their feedback is for you. Well, he did. And they told him, and he found out his name that they were calling him. So long story short, Carol, I just invite you to trust that if it is meant to come out in the coaching, it absolutely will. And this is one where I completely agree. You cannot just bring that, but you can keep your ears and eyes open for an opening where you might be able to ask a question that can bring it about. So let me know if that's helpful to you. All right, Alethea, let's see. What, if ever, is appropriate to share personal stories from your own life? I only ever do this if I feel it'll be helping my client in service. And it's always sometimes it's a way to empathize. Does this line up with leadership? Okay. Yeah, Carol, that's a great question. What have you wanted to bring to our sessions, but maybe have been afraid to? Or maybe you haven't wanted to, or maybe you thought it wouldn't be useful here. Like, I'd keep it really broad, okay? Maybe you haven't wanted to, maybe you don't want me to know. Sometimes that's a great question. What haven't you wanted me to know about versus afraid? Afraid can be good too. Telling stories. So let me just share. So when I'm in an enrollment conversation, even if the person, I'm not acting like this, I'm leading the conversation. And I like them to know it. Like, I want them, when they show up in my office, I want them to know that this is going to be a really different kind of conversation, different than you've ever had. I want you to know, like, I'm going to create context for us. I'll be leading it, although you and I are partnering together. So this is going to be a back and forth, and I'll be leading it so you can relax. So sometimes I'll just say it outright. I'll say it outright. And in that context, Alethea, you can always share a personal story. See, if I'm choosing to share a personal story, that's me in leadership. If I'm consciously saying, you know what, they're talking about this, I'm going to share this story. Now, sometimes I've shared stories without even knowing if they'd be helpful. Just was like, my requirement, Steve challenged Michelle and I. He was like, hey, every enrollment conversation, you got to share at least 2 stories, either a client story and a personal story, or 2 client stories. And I was like, okay, game on. I can do that. And sometimes I wouldn't know if it was going to be helpful, but I was willing to go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lead. I'm going to share a story, and I will carry that out. So Alethea, my point of view is yes, absolutely. Now I want to talk about leadership in a slightly different way, and feel free to keep putting your questions out there. The places that leadership is often uh, not utilized is in when we are setting up a conversation, when we are completing a conversation, or the person has said they want to work with us and we're setting up the next steps. This is where coaches can get very squishy. We can get very uncomfortable, and therefore we become vague. We become vague. I'm going to come right back to you, Sasha. Share client stories in enrollment without making it feel like it's all about you. Because you're right, it has to feel like it's about them. So you're on to something. So here's a great example. So someone has said to me, I want to proceed, and I slow it down and I go, well, tell me more. Like, I want to hear what you imagine is going to occur in this work. I just want to hear you talk about it. And they go, well, look, here's what I think will occur. Like, I will get this relationship handled with my daughter. I want to get some of this stuff cleaned up in my communications at work. And I really feel like I'll get stronger in my own relationship with me. Okay. And I go, okay, all right. I see that. I see that as possible for you too. Okay. So let's talk about the next steps. So you want to proceed. And they say, yeah, no, I want to proceed. Excellent. Pull out your calendar. Let's get your launch session on the calendar. Let's get that set up. And they go, okay. And they pull out their calendar and I pull out mine and I go, okay, so let's do the launch session 2 weeks from today. Put up 2 hours. We're going to do a 2-hour launch session. Okay. I'm putting it on my calendar. Great. So you make sure you have 2 hours. Excellent. Can I do it over Zoom with you? Because it's going to be tricky for me to get here. Yes, we can absolutely do it over Zoom. Payment. So you have 2 options. You can send me a check or we can handle it over PayPal. It will need to be here 48 hours before the launch session. So payment has to be handled 2 days before the launch session. Would you like to use PayPal or do you want to send me a check? Okay, so I'm going to go slow here. This is where in the beginning, and sometimes even 10 years out, people collapse, right? Sometimes our social self gets a little bit like, ooh, that feels so pushy and like you're telling them what to do, and Carolyn, I don't like that. So for those of us that are, we haven't done this before, we were never in a work position where we had to like be super clear and crisp. I was a tour guide at Universal Studios. That was one of my first jobs in Los Angeles. So pretty early, I had to be willing to go, please be quiet. And on the left of the tram, notice did you hear that music? Oh my gosh, do you hear bump, 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 bump? What could that be? That's my Jaws reference. They don't even use Jaws that much, by the way. Like, it's kind of all different now. I think they still use it a little, but anyway. So I was a tour guide, right? So I already had roles that were naturally allowed me to direct. When we get to these parts of conversations, we're directing, and that's leadership, right? So I've had coaches who all of a sudden were like, I'll say, did you tell them when they need to pay by? And they go, no. So you didn't say anything. And they'll say, no, I didn't. I said they have check or PayPal, but I didn't say when. And I say, okay, so what happened there? And they go, I don't know. Sometimes people just forget when we're learning, right? We're like, ooh, I didn't remember. Okay, that's fine. And sometimes it's like, we know, we're like, I don't know. I felt like it was too much. Like, I don't know. I collapsed and I go, okay. So that's an opportunity to strengthen ourselves, right? Like those are the being really crisp and really clear with yourself. Like, I am leading in this part of the conversation, and part of this requires they know exactly how to pay and by when. So let's say you've done this and you're like, I didn't tell them. And that's totally fine. Guess what? That's why there's email. You can send an email that says, Dear Lisa, I realized in reviewing our conversation there was one piece I might have missed out. The payment will be due 48 hours before we begin. So you have until Wednesday on this date at 5 p.m. confirm back that you got this. And they go back and they go, oh, got it. Okay, totally fine. And I say, great. And by the way, I want you to also read a book before you come. One of the things we want to do as part of our leadership is when we are scheduling the launch session and we're handling the payment and how that's going to work, we want to give them something between the time we're sitting with them in this moment and the launch session, so they're already in their coaching. So I like to do a book, or if they're like, I don't read, which is totally fine, I'll be like, great, I'm going to send you 2 videos. Do I have your word that you'll watch both of these videos before the launch session? Kyle, it does not have to be 2 weeks out. I just made that up. You could, Steve Chandler, I think in my first launch session, it might have been 4 days later. Totally fine. It's just based on what works for you, right? I've said to people, hey, I have an opening next week. Do you want to launch next week? You can absolutely do that. There's no like rules around that. It's really more your own calendar. Someone might say, you know what, I can't next week. Can we do the following week? I've had people pushed out a launch session a month. And if that's the case, then I'm going to lead and say, you know what, given it's a month, we want to get the payment handled differently. I'm going to ask you to put down a deposit of X, and then you can handle the rest of the payment the 2 days before. And someone goes, you know what, I can just handle the whole thing right now. Great. So let's get that handled right now. So you'll want to handle that then in the next 72 hours, right? So again, I want to see, can you hear what I'm saying? I'm always giving the next step. I'm not letting them decide, right? I'm like, okay, so then you'll want to handle that by X. Steve Chandler always said, as long as you can come with payment or you can handle it before. So either you need to walk in with a check or handle it before. And he was fine with that. So most people, they wait and they walk in with a check, right? But you don't have to do it that way. What is important is that you lead the person. That helps people to feel like, oh, they know what they're doing. They know how to get me into this process. It's when we're like, oh, you know, and we sort of have a tentative nervousness. Now, most of the time, they won't know to what degree you are nervous or uncomfortable. However, even if you're nervous and uncomfortable, you can practice saying, here's the options for payment. Payment is due by X. We don't want to be surprised by someone saying, I want to do this. Like, how do I keep going with you? We do not want to be surprised by that and act like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before. I'm really I'm excited. Let me excuse me a moment. I'm going to go in the bathroom and go, someone wants to work with me. Oh my God. And then I'm going to come back and go, okay, all right, I've never had to do this before. Let me think about it, right? We don't want to do that. Even if it's your first time, you're going to act like you've done this 8 million times. That is part of leading yourself. And, you know, someone like Sasha, who has been and is an actor, she can go, yeah, I can turn that on. I can do that. For those of us that don't come from an acting background, it might take more practice. Okay, it might take some more practice. I want to go back to Sasha's question of how do I share client stories in enrollment without making it feel like it's all about me. So again, one of the ways we're leading ourselves in a conversation is, to me, one of the greatest ways to demonstrate self-leadership is in the act of practicing. So when we practice, we're being a leader. We're being a leader in our work, right? Part of this is having a sense of, yeah, I need to practice because I want to get good at this, right? I want to be a strong leader in my work. I want to be a leader in this conversation and demonstrate excellence. Stephen McGee, who comes in and does a day at my school, who's a great leadership coach, he made this statement, and I used it in a post I made, and it was, when did easy become so popular? When did easy become so popular? And I offer that to all of us, right? It's like, I'm sure some of you are sitting in this Facebook Live going, oh my God, this is hard. Like, there's a lot to remember, Carolyn. This is like challenging. I don't understand. Like, when did easy become popular, right? Like, this is a real profession, just like lawyers who go to law school and, dentists who go to dental school and doctors who go to med school, you know, they learn the steps of a procedure. This is a procedure, right? This is a procedure, and it has warmth, and it has integrity, and it has steps. And they might vary a little bit, and it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable, and you want to learn the steps. Amber Chris, who's lead faculty at my school, who came from the world of Broadway, she was a dancer, and she talks about it like dance steps. So you want to get the choreography down, right? So come up with a way to learn this that works for you, and really get and claim, like, this is me being a leader in my work. So the way that I make client stories feel like they're about the person and not about me is, ideally, Sasha, the story relates to something that they're talking with you about. So what I mean is, if someone's talking to me about, you know, a relationship issue in their marriage, while they're talking, I'm doing an inventory. Okay, clients who had marriage stuff. Who did I work with? Oh, okay. Ding, ding, ding. I'm going to go to this person. I'm going to pull out the jukebox. Okay, all right. Or if I can't think of one, I'm going to use my own. That's my default. If I cannot think of a story of a client, I'm going to use my own story. So I'll say, you know, I'll let them share, and then I'll say, so listen, I worked with a client a couple of years ago, and they were having a pretty significant issue in their marriage that was similar to yours. I can tell the story. Would that be helpful? So I might pause and say, would that story be helpful to you? So who then is choosing it? Who do you hear choosing it when I say, would that be helpful? They go, yeah, that would be helpful. I'd love to hear a story of someone you worked with this issue. Or, yeah, that'd be great, right? So I want to pause and go, hey, I worked with someone who had something like this. Would it be helpful to hear about it? Again, I'm inviting them into the question. I've never had anyone be like, no, I don't want to hear about that at all. And I'll even say, you know, would you be okay if I share something from my own marriage that's similar? Would that be useful? Yeah. So Sasha, I'm glad that's helpful. I was just thinking about something and it went away. It'll come back though. I know it will. Sounds like I should say how, when payment will be handled. And then if those options timing won't work easily for them, I let them say that and we talk about it from there. Yeah, that's a great extraction, Kyle. So I'm going to use what you wrote as an example. And I know you can handle this, Kyle. So I'm going to say, this is an example of what not to do as a leader in enrollment. Does it sound good to do payment by X? So Kyle said, that's probably what I should not say. And I'm going to say, okay, so first, is anybody watching? I'm a little late to the game. My family and I just started watching Glow Up on Netflix, which is a reality makeup show. And one of the judges uses this phrase. My daughter is going to be like, why'd you do that, mommy? You shouldn't have said it and used it. But I told her, I'm like, I'm going to use that. So an example of not being a leader is saying, does it sound good to do payment by X as a question? Kyle, ding dong, you got it. That is not a leadership move. Not. She says it with an English accent. She's like, ding dong, that is gorgeous. What you did is amazing. It's beautiful, okay? And she uses it a lot. Like, clearly someone told her, the producer, like, we want it, like, a phrase is good. Like, people love that. It's like the show Nailed It. Nailed it. So I'm going to work with Kyle here, right? So we don't want to ever be like, yeah, so does it sound good to do payment by X? Because who is that giving the leadership to? Who is that giving the leadership to? That is handing the leadership to the person, to the prospective client. And we don't want to do that, right? Because all of a sudden, and this is what role reversal is, all of a sudden we're saying, they go, so we say, yeah, does it work? Does that sound good to do payment by X? And it's like cognitive dissonance. They're like, oh, no, that doesn't work. No, I don't know. And all of a sudden there's like this unspoken thing in the room called, oh my God, they just handed leadership to me, and I don't know what to do with that. This is your job. You're the coach. You're the person. I don't know. That can happen inside a person, and it's all unconscious. Or see someone who like they're used to leading, right? They'll be like, yeah, no, it doesn't sound good to me to do that. It sounds good to me to pay you the day of. In fact, it sounds good for me to pay you after our first meeting, because then I'll determine whether or not I want to work with you, right? So I've been in situations where all of a sudden, without knowing it, I've allowed the leadership to be like, when you go to a sporting event and they have those big beach balls that people pass, like bounce around the stadium, all of a sudden the leadership beach ball is up and it's coming down on their side, and they're like, got it, got it. Now I'm going to say what I want. And all of a sudden I've just let it go. And now they're telling me when they're going to pay, and they're telling me how they don't want to meet every other week, and they're telling me, and I'm going, oh no, the beach ball, the leadership beach ball is gone. And I've lost it. Jenna, see, ding dong, you got it. I love it. So I hope that was helpful, Kyle. So let me know, did that answer your question? We don't ever want to put a payment statement in a question where they get to choose, right? That's not strong leadership. That's not helpful to the other person. Now, it's fine if someone says to me, actually, just given some of the ways my money is working, me paying you 72 hours in advance is not going to work. I don't think I can pay you until the day before. And then I go, okay, let me think about this. Why don't we do this? Can we let's move out your launch session so that you can handle payment 72 hours in advance. And they go, oh, I can do that. Like, let's move it. There's just some things going on. Great. Okay. So yes, it's much better to have them say to you, I can't do that, and here's why. And then you renegotiate. Nuria, okay, I love this. What about leading someone that does not reply to an invitation? Good question, really good question. So let's slow that down. So I wanna make sure I understand what you mean, Nuria, and this might be helpful to people who don't even know, like, what's an invitation? Like, what is that? So an invitation is when a coach looks out into their world and they go, oh, you know what? I see Sasha over there. Oh my gosh, she's talked about her own health and wellness. I'm going to invite her into a conversation. I'm going to send her an email where I talk to her, and I'll invite her. I've been thinking about her so much. I mean, I think she's extraordinary. I love how she's so radiant, and she's always trying out something new in her world that she shares on Facebook. So I'm going to write to her, and I'm going to invite her into a conversation. So that's what an invitation is, okay? So when someone doesn't respond to an invitation, it's a little bit different, right? So I've sent an invitation and I've gotten radio silence. Number one, maybe something's happened, right? Maybe something has occurred in their life that has created the radio silence, something that has nothing to do with us. Maybe there's a family illness, maybe there's an emergency, maybe they are out of town and they don't use one of those email response mechanisms that says, I'm on vacation and I'm not going to handle email because I am choosing to have a full and complete vacation where I don't look at work email. Some people have those now. So maybe they don't have that. Like, I haven't used that. It's good to do. I think they're great. I just haven't done it. So maybe they're involved in something else. So leading in that context is going to be this. Leading in that context is going to be sending it again. So I'm a leader. I've waited, I don't know, maybe it's been a week, maybe it's been 7 days, I usually give people a week when I'm inviting. And I just send it with a question mark in the subject line with a very simple note above it. So it's the email. I've hit reply all, and I've stripped out the subject line just to have a question mark, and I'll write, Dear Nuria, I didn't hear back from you on the below. Did you receive? Let me know either way, Nuria. And then the rest of the email is below. Like, I've been thinking about you. Wow, Sasha, your face glows every time I see you on your Instagram stories. It's remarkable. I'm always drawn into anything you're saying. and I've been wondering something. You know, I've been doing a certain kind of coaching now for quite some time, and I wanted to see if you might want to come sit with me and have a conversation about yourself and all the things that you're doing for yourself, right? So I'm going to send it again. So that's another way. I so appreciate you, Nuria, for bringing this forward. One of the ways we do not demonstrate leadership and demonstrate excellence in our work is we go, ooh, I sent it, they didn't respond. Oh, it's okay. I'm just going to forget about it, right? So this is along the lines of Stephen McGee's, since when did easy become so popular? Many of you know I worked at the University of Santa Monica for 12 years. And my boss was the extraordinary Dr. Mary Hulnick, who is the co-director of the University of Santa Monica. She and her husband, Dr. Ron Hulnick, are the two people who birthed the principles and practices of spiritual psychology, which is very much a foundation of the work that I do as a coach. And Mary was also the director of the school, and she was my boss when I started as the director of marketing. Okay. Now, I had had other jobs in my life. I was not new to the world of holding down a job at all, but I had never worked in an environment and for someone who had such a strong requirement for excellence in their work. Never in my life. I never even really had that word was really not a word that I used in my life, like excellence. I mean, my word, if there was a word, was like mediocre. Mediocre was a word that maybe I subscribed to. I mean, of course, as a young, like I wanted to do a good job, but I was sort of inside of me okay with skating by, just good enough, just good enough. And here I was working for Mary Hulnick. Just good enough was never good enough. I mean, you want to talk about someone who had high standards for excellence. And I didn't really know what that meant. And it was really in that environment and from being a student at the university that I had a full experience of what excellence is. So I want to invite us in this profession, and you can all go out into the world and be part of this, is that we as a profession want to demonstrate excellence in our work, right? Excellence. And to me, that is being a leader, right? A leader demonstrates excellence in their work. So for you as a coach sitting at home by yourself going, what is, Carolyn, I don't know what that means. That means that your emails are well written. That means that you respond when someone writes to you and you don't let them drift off and be ghosted by you. That means that you are looking at your schedule, and if you sent an email to someone on one day and they didn't respond, 4 weeks doesn't go by and you go, oh God, they didn't respond. I just totally missed that, right? We need to learn how to be excellent in our jobs. And part of that is becoming an excellent coach, right? My coaching work, I want that to be excellent. I want to be the greatest coach I can be and really transform people's lives. But there's another aspect of our work, and that's called being excellent in our communications. That means being excellent in communicating the parameters of working with us. That's being a leader. You know, many coaches get into this situation, and I'm happy if someone wants to post another question, but this is about leadership. Many coaches have worked with people, and then the person is about to renew. And this is about leadership and renewals. And they go, oh, you know what? I want to work with you again, but I'd rather, could we do once a month? Like once a month would be great. If I could do once a month, that would be perfect. And many coaches say, yeah, sure. Yeah, once a month, absolutely. We could totally do once a month. And what I will say to coaches is, so tell me more about that. Like, tell me more about that response of, yeah, I'm happy to do, like, good. One time, once a month, happy, great. Money in, perfect. Got it. I'll coach you once a month. And they go, oh God, well, I kind of just want to keep working with them. I don't want to lose them. And I say, okay, I totally get that. Been there, done that. Are you okay with them dictating the terms of this? Like, and they go, oh, I never thought about that, right? Now, my experience, just for everyone to know, is that the best coaching doesn't occur when we're working with someone once a month. Have I done it? Yes. Has it been okay? Yes. Has it been wildly transformative? Probably not. I mean, there's a couple people that have been long-running clients that I've made an agreement that I'm willing to do that as an exception. And if it becomes clear that like all they're doing is reporting in and we're not really doing any real work, game over. And I let them know. So the agreement has to be, I can say we're done. Like we can't do this. We have to go back to the regular cadence of every other week. Or if you're a coach who does, every week on with 1 week off, but that you as the coach, you are the one who knows how you want to work, and you are the expert in where the deepest, most transformative work gets done. So it's very common for people to be like, oh, can we just do once a week? That would be great. And it's very common that a coach is like, sure, oh yeah. And we don't even slow it down and go, tell me more about that. What's that request about? What is that based on? So let me know, like, is that a helpful communication to you? Is this helpful to talk about leadership in the context of a renewal and how many of us go, oh yeah, great. Once a week, I'd love that because I just want to keep you as a client. So that is that. I want to know, is that helpful to you? As anyone is answering that or coming up with more questions for me to answer, I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction. And I want to go to another component of where we often don't think of ourselves as leaders, as a coach, and where it can be super helpful to kind of claim inside, like, oh, I'm a leader. This is the part where I need to demonstrate leadership for them. Okay, so someone has paid, they have come for their first session. Many of us don't have anything we do that creates any agreements with them about how we're going to work together. Many coaches jump right in, they start coaching, and there is nothing that is discussed about our agreements for our time together. So I'll give you an example. So I have an executive that I'm coaching, fantastic woman, very senior in her organization. She and I agreed we were going to work together. She came to her first session. Now, consistently, she'd been coming just maybe 2 or 3 minutes late. Just 2 or 3 minutes late. And inside of me, I knew. I was like, Carolyn, we're going to have to address this because 3 minutes is going to turn into 5 minutes, and that is not going to set up a great container here. So I have agreements that I give to clients that I send them a few minutes before the launch session, and then I ask them to have them up or have them printed out, and I have them on my end, and we go through them one by one. I read them. And so the agreements say things like, we agree to arrive on time. You agree to bring an agenda to every session. You are responsible to send me that agenda the day before our session. So the client is responsible for bringing what they want to work on, and so on. So we had the agreements. I went through them and we got to the time one. And she looked at me and she said, I'm really glad you have this in here because I often will arrive late to meetings. And I said, really? Tell me more. And she said, I do. Like her schedule is it's back to back to back to back. There's no breaks in between. That's something we're coaching on, right? And I said to her, I wonder, have you ever considered asking how the people feel when you come late? And she got really big-eyed and she said, no. I said, you might want to. I said, because I was once facilitating a meeting between a team of leaders, and one of the leaders consistently came late. And we were in the meeting discussing if they were going to have an agreement amongst themselves that meetings start on time. People don't show 5 minutes late, the meeting's over. Like, we're not going to wait for you, and we're not going to have the meeting. We're just going to go, I got other things to do. And they were having this fierce argument because some of the guys were like, no, I don't want that agreement, because they did not want to have to be responsible and show up on time. And one of them turned to the guy who was like arguing for not having that agreement. And he said, I want you to know what it feels like when you come late to these meetings. It feels like you don't give a crap. It feels like my time doesn't matter. It feels like you could really care less about anyone else but yourself. The room got really quiet. And she looked at me on the Zoom call and she said, I never thought about it that way. This is going to be really good for me to practice with you. And I said, yeah. I said, because you're more than 2 minutes, I'm gone. I'm gone. Because this is where you're going to practice showing up and keeping your word. So that's an example of being a leader in that situation. Because I know so many coaches who allow people to be late. They allow people to kind of, and then they get uncomfortable. Oh my gosh, they're coming late. I haven't said anything. And that's something then we work on, right? So let me know if that was helpful. And then I'm going to go back to another question. All right. So I'm going to read it on my other device because it's getting a little squirrely. Okay. Let's see here. Kyle, I know you have a question. All right. Let's do it. All right. So, wondering how to be in leadership and sensitive in this situation. Client in second program asked if I know a cuddle coach geographically near a friend of theirs, a couple of hours away, because it may help their friend. Should I ask how my client feels about me basically possibly enrolling their friend? Client in second program asked if I know. So I want to make sure I understand your question, Kyle. So you have a client, but they're asking for their friend. Oh, I see. And you're like, is it okay? Like they're asking for a different coach and you're thinking I could potentially assist that person. Let me make sure I've got that right, Kyle. You're thinking you could help them and how will that be? If I'm accurate, and I know you'll let me know if I'm not, okay. What I would say is, so to my client, let's say it was you, Kyle, I might be like, Kyle, so I know you're asking for a coach, like for someone near your friend. I'm totally fine if you want me to give you a name of someone. And I mean, I'd be willing to have a conversation with that person if that would be helpful. Like, unless, and some people feel this way. They're like, I don't want my coach working with my friend. No. I want you for myself. I don't feel good about you coaching my friend. That's totally fine too. And I wanted you to know I'm willing, and I'm also happy to get you someone else. So that would be a way to handle that with leadership. So in other words, that would be a perfect way to go. So let me slow this down. I'd be willing to talk to your person. Okay. I'd be willing to. So, and I'm fine if you're like, I don't want them to have you, Carolyn. I'd rather them work with someone that not you. I'd feel weird if my friend and I were both coaching with you. So Kyle, let me know if that was helpful. Okay. Eric, welcome. I've been offering expectations versus agreements to so many clients. And often I point to the agreements we made at the start of coaching as a real example. That's fantastic. So Eric is talking about the audio by Steve Chandler called Expectations versus Agreements. And that's a fantastic audio. If you do not have it and you want it, put it in the private message me via Facebook, and then I will get it to you. Okay, so if you do not have the fantastic audio, Expectations versus Agreements by Steve Chandler, private message me and I will get it to you. Okay, because to me, every coach should have that. It is such an incredible audio that you can send to clients who work in corporate settings, who want to have more agreements in their families, the whole deal. It's so good. Even if Steve Chandler sounds like Garfield the cat when he speaks, and sometimes he does, I've sent it to people and they're like, who is this guy? He sounds like Garfield. And I said, ignore that. That is pure gold. Listen to every word and then re-listen. So Eric, that's fantastic. Carol, issue with client coming late way too often. Yeah. This is where, so I'm going to walk through, right? Okay, so let's take Carol's situation. So she's now had someone coming late and she hasn't addressed it. So I'm going to mock up me working with someone who's been coming late and I haven't addressed it yet. Okay, so, And I've had this happen too, Carol. So earlier on in my practice, I had a guy who I adored as a client, and he came late a lot. And, sometimes I made it okay, sometimes I didn't. And I was talking to Michelle about it, and she said to me, "What are you doing? Like, it doesn't have to be punitive, but that has to get addressed." And I said, "Okay, you're right. I do need to address it." So he came into his next session. It was like 6 minutes after, and I was like, "So listen, before we get into your agenda, we need to handle something. I've allowed this. We've had conversations about it. We need to have another conversation, and I'm going to get real curious as to how we're going to solve this. Because my gosh, you keep coming late, and there doesn't seem to be enough integrity inside of you yet where it's like really becoming, this is important." So first, Carol, now we had conversations before. You may not have yet. I want to be like, "Hey, I've noticed something. It seems like a trend that you come late to the session. So we need to clean this up because that's not going to work. And I'm not serving you if I'm allowing that. So first, can you hear that?" I'll say like, "Can you hear me on that?" And they go, "Yeah, no, I know. It's like I'm coming off these meetings," and I go, "I really hear you." So this is where, and Carol, you can use this. This is a place where you get to practice keeping your word to yourself, because it's not, yes, it doesn't work for me that you come late. And it also is, you're cutting into your own time and you're out of integrity because you said you were going to come on time and you're not. And that's eroding your own trust inside of yourself. And that's not going to work here. So we need to restore your word to yourself. We need to restore this agreement. So first, though, before we do that, tell me more about what goes on inside of you when this is happening. So I want to get curious, because if they're showing up late with me, they're showing up late in their life, right? Like we are not the only place that it's showing up, that you're showing up late. So we have had conversations. They have some really important reason for being late this time. Okay, great, Carol. So great. Now you get to practice a different level of leadership. So if you've had the conversation and you've said, new agreement, you need to come on time, I would encourage you to be like, "Look, I've noticed there still doesn't seem to be integrity around our start time. And here's what we're going to do. So it doesn't work for me for you to come late, and it doesn't work for you because you're out of integrity with your word and you're making other things more important than coming on time. So can you hear that? You are making something else more important than showing up here on time." And they go, "I guess, because I'm making these other things important." Right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be here until 2 minutes after the start time. At 2 minutes, if you're not on time, I will get off. So I will shut down the Zoom and we're done. And that session will have been used and we'll move to the next session. Now, Carol, I can imagine that you're like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Nope, you cannot do that unless you're willing to follow through." But I can tell you, I did that with my client. First time I was like, "Oh, bye." And I left. Did not happen again, right? Didn't happen. It's like we need to be willing to say no. And what I did with that person, I said, if it happens 3 times where you are more than 2 minutes late and I'm like, I'm out and I leave the session, we're going to complete the coaching. If it happens 3 times, we're done. Because I can't work like that. I can't really serve you at the level that is necessary if we can't even keep the basic agreement of being on time. So, Carol, this is something to practice. I know you have a fantastic coach who would be more than willing to practice this with you and work with you. And she may have some other ideas for how to work with it. But I offer that, and you can really put it in the context of, I have an opportunity to grow my leadership as a coach. And this is where it needs to show up. Yeah, bravo. And it does feel scary at first. I mean, believe me, I was like, "Woo, I'm going to do this." And Deborah Johnson, I love, "Would you be late for a flight?" Yep, that is classic Steve Chandler, right? We wouldn't. I mean, maybe we would, but I wouldn't. Nobody I know would. My dad was once late for a flight, but that was on him. But it's a really, really excellent example of where we are leaking leadership. When we let a client show up late consistently, we let a client pay late if there's a payment plan. That's another example. If we haven't addressed it, if someone's like, oh, I can't make that date, can we do another date? If we don't slow that down and address that, huge leak in leadership. I want to go back to some of these fabulous questions. All right. Yes, Kyle, do that live at the start or at the end of one of the sessions. So absolutely, that's a live conversation. Brianna, question. This is a follow-up from addressing lateness with a client. I believe I have a hard time addressing this because I haven't fully mastered myself. It's been a lifelong challenge that I've improved, but I keep hearing the voice in my head saying, how can you ask this of a client when you struggle with it so much yourself? So Brianna, here's my question. Are you showing up late for your clients? I hear that you might be late in other contexts, but are you showing up late with your client? Let me know the answer to that. Sachiko, I have an experience of becoming pushy by trying to demonstrate leadership coach when a person who said no after saying yes. We didn't have a well-established relationship, so that wasn't a good idea. I pointed out her polite no, and it made her feel really uncomfortable. It left an awkward energy between us. Is there any way I can demonstrate leadership and clean up afterward? It's been a few months. That's a really good one, Sachiko. I want to think about that for a second. I have an experience of becoming pushy by trying to demonstrate leadership. Oh, so they had said yes, and then they said no. And you, in the conversation, later said, oh, now you're saying no. And it created awkwardness. So here's what you could do. You're getting this in real time. See, I'm thinking as we're on a Facebook Live. Is that allowed to be quiet and think for a moment on a Facebook Live? I don't know, but I'm doing it. I would probably send an email, and I would probably say something like, dear so-and-so. Here's what I would do. I would send the email, and I'd say, dear so-and-so, it's been a couple months, and I'm aware that, we might have left the last interaction in a way that didn't feel good for you. And I want to apologize for that, because that's not how I want us to leave a conversation. I am totally fine if we never ever talk again. But please, I just want you to know I'm aware that we left the conversation and it didn't feel very good. So I apologize for that. And apologies can be really powerful with nothing else. So Sachiko, you could just apologize. And because you're in the school, you can write a draft and put it in the Facebook page, and Amber and I can look at it. But that can be a way to clean that up. Apologies are a beautiful example of demonstrating leadership, by the way. I want to make sure I am catching, I have not shown up late for a client. I am so afraid that one day I might. This shows up in other areas of my life. And yes, I've been late for flights. Here's Brianna. Oh, Brianna, my heart goes out to you that this is an issue that you've been struggling with. I would offer to you that this could be really powerful for you in your own leadership in your life. And maybe a question to ask yourself is like, so if I'm going to be in integrity with my client who's showing up late, knowing that I have places in my life where I'm not showing up on time, what would I need to do to get more in integrity in my own life? Where am I willing to get on the court and practice being on time more? Now, Brianna, you could pick one area that you're going to practice in, right? Like I get you may have a couple areas you're showing up late, but what about one area where you're like, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice showing up on time for this. And then I'm going to really say to my client, I'm going to ask you to start showing up on time. And I'm going to ask that there be a clean agreement. And I want to see where you are with that. Like, tell me about that. Tell me what's happening for you, that you're making something else more important than getting here on time. There are these series of workshops called the Insight workshops. They're fabulous workshops. They're here in Los Angeles. Landmark may do a version of this. I don't know, though. If any of you have done Landmark, maybe they do some version of this. But I know in the Insight seminars, when someone comes late, when they come in late, somebody will be waiting outside for the people who come late, and they will pose a question. And the question is this. It's like, so what did you make more important than getting here on time? Now, there are a lot of different ways to ask that question, right? There are a lot of different ways. I can ask it and be like, so what did you make more important than getting here on time? Side note, judgmentally. I can ask it loaded with judgment. I can ask it loaded with being punitive, or I can ask it neutrally, meaning I'm not in judgment, but I'm posing this question to you. So that question would be asked in a way that I just said. So just before we go in, before I open up the doors, what did you make more important than getting here on time? Now, I can tell you, I've watched this outside the room, and you can see people get flustered, they get defensive, they get angry. Sometimes they cry because they're like, I just had something happen. And the person is so loving with them. They're like, I really hear you. You just want to ask that question, right? When the person gets defensive, they're like, look, you're in this seminar to learn about like getting more awake and more conscious to how you do life. So that's just a question. So it's a fabulous question, right? What did you make more important than getting here on time, right? And again, it's all in how you ask. It's all in how you ask. Another classic, what was confusing about 2 p.m.? I'm not sure I carry the humor and pithiness necessary, but you might. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Steve Chandler could carry that off, but that's sensitive, right? Because in a way, and I'll share this for everyone, because I love that, Deborah. It's utilizing, in a way, sarcasm, right? There's sarcasm in that. What was confusing to you about 2 p.m.? And I'm sensitive to that because sarcasm erodes trust. Sarcasm erodes trust. Now, I will say this. It depends on the context of the relationship. Steve Chandler and I have known each other for many, many years. And Steve Chandler, I mean, for me, his humor really works. He's very dry. He can be very sarcastic. And he would use humor with Michelle and I in ways that some people would be like, that is, oh my gosh, that was so mean. We didn't hear it that way, and we didn't experience it that way. So you need to know who you're talking to, right? There are some people I would not ever do. So what was confusing about 2 p.m.? Now, for the right person, maybe. And there is truth to sarcasm erodes trust, right? It just does. So I'm someone, I like humor. I like to have fun. I like to be funny. I've certainly, if anyone has done my school, they would be like, Carolyn, you've used sarcasm, and I do. But I am really careful that there's a context created. In the context of my school, it's like there's a lot of warmth and a lot of support. So I really work with wanting people to feel really supported before I might be more playful in that way. So that's just something for everyone to consider, right? I would never recommend anyone pulling sarcasm like right out of the gate when it comes to time, right? But it is an interesting thing, and I'm glad you brought this up, Deborah. So we want to look at, right, like there are people that we all know that there is no way on God's green earth that we would show up late for them. We know we wouldn't, right? They have such a level of authority, maybe not even a title, but there's a level of authority and a level of respect that we have for them that we would never even think about showing up late, right? Unless I was in like a massive family emergency. And it's a really valuable thing to think about. Who are the people in your life who you would never even like consider showing up late for? And ask yourself why, right? So for me, Mary Holnick is a great example. Like I would never show up late for her. Now, if I had an emergency, I would obviously write to her and say, hey, Mary, I'm going to be late and here's why. But I would never, there is nothing in how she presents herself that would make it okay for me to show up late. And most people know that the first time they're in a classroom with her. That's who she is. So you want to ask yourself, as leaders in your work, what are the qualities I need to cultivate inside of me to grow in my leadership such that that's the energy that I carry. And Steve Chandler has that energy, right? Like, I think there was one time that Devin Bandison, who some of you may know, he also teaches at my school. He is a fantastic coach. He just completed a Game Changer, which is an event that he holds in New York and Los Angeles. The Los Angeles one is coming up very soon. And he and I were in a very small group of coaches with Steve. It was an elite group that Steve ran. And he and I were in it together. And he and I were having breakfast together. And, you know, Steve is very sharp about his start time. And so all of a sudden we'd been talking, and all of a sudden we were like, uh-oh. And we ran to the door. The door was like shutting. It might have almost been shut. And we were like sweaty. And he, you know, I mean, he was not thrilled. And he just made a statement. He got very quiet and he was like, okay. So I'm not sure what occurred there, that would have happened, that you were literally on the verge of being late, and being late means all of us would have been slowed down. And the next time, the doors will be shut and you will not be allowed in. We apologized to everybody, Devin and I individually, and said, we're really sorry, that will not happen again. And he was clear, like, and it was appropriate. Uncomfortable to be a seasoned, you know, successful coach and to be racing to get in on time, like sweaty. And Devin will laugh because I'm outing him on this, and he will remember it. And we both got very uncomfortable. Devin considers himself to be very precise, right? And some of this, maybe that's the quality you need to cultivate in your own leadership, precision. And Brianna, maybe that's a word for you to play with. And like, precision is a quality of leadership. What are the qualities of leadership? Precision, clarity, excellence, timeliness. There are more, but I want to go to this question from Sasha. Carolyn, how do you deal with lateness with new moms or people with extremely demanding jobs like COVID, nurses during COVID? When they struggle to show up, how do you hold these agreements? Or shift workers who control their own schedule week to week, who struggle to control the exact same way? Or do you alter this agreement in some way? So Sasha, I'm gonna ask you a question. I appreciate the question, number one. Number two, do you have any clients currently in this category? New moms, nurses, or shift workers? I wanna know, because I'm not, you know, my new guideline in the school is no hypotheticals, right? I don't wanna deal in hypotheticals. I wanna deal with real situations that I can potentially help you in. So let me know. I have worked with new moms. So number one, brand new moms. I have been a brand new mom. And they come to their session. However, we have a different kind of agreement. So I'll just talk about new moms. Sometimes new moms get stuck in a situation where it's like baby screaming, and I mean new. I'm not talking 6 months old. I'm talking like first 3 months, new, screaming baby. All of a sudden, you know, everything has gone haywire and somebody needs to breastfeed again, even though they just breastfed. Or something else, you know, the grandparent who is taking care of the baby is clearly not having a great day, etc. So we have a new agreement that if something like that occurs, there's an agreement that we will pause the session. Either pause it or we will stop it and we will reschedule. So with a new mom, I'll create a new agreement, and there'll be an exception. Let's put it that way. There'll be an exception. And you can do that with anybody. I mean, I could do that with a nurse who is in, you know, challenging times with, you know, many hospitals being overwhelmed, and they were like, look, my intention is to come on time. I might get pulled into an extra shift. I'll create a new agreement that has an exception embedded in it. That's what I would do. So I want to be sensitive to people's life circumstances, but I don't want to make it like it's a blanket, you can come late. And it's a blanket, it's okay. Like, I want there to be a clear agreement with an exception. So let me know, Sasha, if that's helpful. Rita. In our last session, my client said she was doubting about the impact of our sessions. And I told her I would send her a series of questions for her to see her progress over the last 3 months. Shall I also prepare a 3-month review for her using my own notes to remind her where she started from and which insights she had at each session? Um, Sasha, so appreciate that. So I handled the new mom. I would make some exceptions and a COVID nurse, but I want to come back to that because a group is a little bit different. So I'm going to come back to that. I want to help Amrita here. What a great question. So did everyone hear that? So a client said to her, they're doubting the impact of the sessions. And Rita told her she would send her a series of questions for her to see her progress over the last 3 months. And her question to me is, should I also prepare a 3-month review for her to remind her where she started from and which insights she had in each session? And Rita, I might do that, but I might do that more for me. I don't know if I would present it because, see, I want to go deeper on when a client says to me that they're doubting the impact of our sessions. I would want to be like, wow, tell me more about that. Tell me more. I would really, because I would need to know more, Amrita. How long have you been coaching the person for? What did they hire you for? What was the reason they hired you as a coach? What was the project, if you will, that they wanted to do with you? And it can be an inner project or an outer project or a combo. But I'd need to know all that. But if someone said to me, I'm starting to doubt the impact of this, I'd be like, okay, I want to hear more about that. See, because in my agreements, it says the client is responsible for getting what they want out of the sessions. So let me repeat that. The client is responsible for getting what they want out of the sessions. So what does that mean? That means that they have a leadership responsibility too. If something's not working in a session, they need to tell me, like, oh, that didn't work for me. I've had clients do that. Yeah, that didn't really work. Okay, tell me more. Oh, great, then we won't do that. Let's come up with something else that works better for you. So, Amrita, I hope that gives you some, like, I'd want it, and I might write to the person and say, I realize I didn't ask you some questions when you shared about doubting the impact. I want to make sure we put extra time in your session. Let's add on another 45 minutes. Where first, let's go really slow. I want to hear more about that. And Amrita, I think just go over, what did they hire you for? Many coaches, when I ask them that, they kind of don't know. They're like, what did they hire me for? When Steve always would laugh when we came to him with these kind of things, and he'd say, well, what did they hire you for? And if we were like, what did they hire me for? I think it was for he's like, if you don't know clearly what they hired you for, that's the root of the problem, right? We want to know what someone is hiring us for, and we want to know do we know we can deliver on that as a coach, right? And that doesn't mean that the client is responsible, but I don't want to be vague about what someone's hiring me for. I want there to be clarity around that, okay? So, Amrita, we'll see if you respond back. So in a group, Sasha, they're not showing up for group reports and calls. So if I had 2 people in a group who were not showing up for calls and reports, I would obviously get them on the phone and be like, hey, let's slow this down. I'm noticing that you're not coming to the calls and you're not submitting a report. Like, tell me what's happening, right? And we would slow way down, and the mom might have a different thought than the COVID nurse, right? The mom might be like, this is just, I'm falling apart here, Sasha, or to your client. I'm falling apart here. I'm not capable of getting the reports in. Now, if I had a new mom, depending on how new they were, I might be like, you know what? Let's have an agreement that you are not going to submit a report. Now, I want to be straight with you. You're going to miss getting some coaching there, but given what's happening, I'm okay if you don't submit a report. However, the group call, this is a tough one, right? Because that's where you're missing live coaching. So you've missed the last 3. And I'm starting to question whether or not the group even makes sense, right? Given what's occurring for you. So I might have a conversation, number 1, about does it make sense for you to continue? I might, I don't know, make an exception and go, can we have an agreement that you're going to listen to every group recording and you have to make at least every other call? I don't know, Sasha, but there'd be a conversation, right? It wouldn't just be okay. So the options are they might need to step out of the group. The options are there exceptions where we can make it work for them? My guess is on both fronts, they're probably feeling a little dissatisfied that they're not getting what they want from the group. They thought they could, they thought it would work. All of those things, depending on where they are in the group, I might convert their fee into some one-on-one sessions where there's more room to go, I know I'm available on Saturday at noon. So converting it to one-on-one sessions is an option too. So let me know if that is helpful. Erin, I just had a client come to her group coaching with her 2-year-old granddaughter because her daughter had a meeting running late. Very distracting, 100%, Erin. So tell me what you did, because that's a great leadership opportunity, and I'm curious how you handled it. I'm going to come back to that. So Erin, please respond and I will look for it. Gareth, how do you differentiate leadership from co-creation? Tell me, Gareth, it's a great question. I want to know what does co-creation mean to you? Maybe what I'm sharing, you're hearing co-creation. You know, to me, if I had to make a distinction, like, we're not going to co-create the fee. My fee is my fee. You would never, like, we're not co-creating that together. Like, this is the fee. This is what it costs to work with me. And I'm a leader in my work. I know what my work creates when someone coaches with me. We're not going to co-create on being on time, right? Like, my requirement is you come on time for your sessions. We could co-create an agreement that you're going to be on time, but it is a hard agreement, you know, and I don't mean hard I mean like hard. This is not a negotiable agreement. I think there's subtleties. So you may be hearing me, you may hear me and go, she's just co-creating with someone. At its essence, the coaching relationship is something that's created together. So I appreciate that. If that's what you're wondering, Gareth, I do want you to know that's how I see it. Like, ultimately, we are creating something together. We're co-creating new possibilities for you. And it requires as much from you as it does from me, However, I'm responsible for the quality of the container. Like, if it gets leaky, if I allow people to come late consistently, if I allow them to pay late, those kinds of things, then I'm eroding the container. And that's on me. So yes, it's a co-creation, but I hold myself at I am the person who is responsible that the container stays tight and a place where they know there are edges, right? They know this is a safe place, and they know that I'm not going to allow them to get loosey-goosey, right? Because people do. That's part of what we go to hire a coach for, right? I want to learn how to be stronger at keeping my word to myself and others. So I want to keep that container with just a lot of integrity. And to me, the areas of time, of payment, of agreements, all of those are ripe opportunities to strengthen our leadership, to demonstrate leadership, everything. And Erin, I thanked her for making the meeting and helping her daughter. Thankfully, she was muted when she wasn't speaking. All right, so Erin, I love that you shared this. And Gareth, tell me if that was helpful, what I responded with, okay? Because maybe it wasn't. Here's some things you could have done. So if someone showed up with their 2-year-old granddaughter, and I would probably say, oh my gosh, my daughter's not back yet. I'm babysitting. I'm going to be like, let's do this. Let's start your session when your daughter arrives. So I really hear you. You're helping your daughter. This is unusual. They weren't intending to come home late. So let's do this. Call me back. When is she going to be home? She should be here in 15 minutes. Totally fine. Let's start at 1:15. But I want my full hour, Carolyn. Then I'll only have 45 minutes. And I'll say, yeah, that's right. We're not going to have the full hour, but I want it. Can't she just sit here? You know, I get it seems like it would be fine, but it really won't be, because she deserves your full attention. She's your beautiful granddaughter. Oh, it was in a group. Oh my gosh. Even more, I would say, here's what we're going to do. You're going to come back when your daughter comes home. So I wouldn't start the session late. In a group, I'd say, hey, you know what? Let's do this. If it were me, you're talking to me, Carolyn, I still love that you're helping your daughter with her child. I'm going to ask that you go be with your granddaughter and come back when she gets home. So, because she's gorgeous and she's kind of a distraction in an amazing way, and we don't want to get distracted. So, you go be with your granddaughter and come join the call when your daughter gets home. So, that's what I would have done 100%. I wouldn't want someone sitting there with their granddaughter. And it's fine that you did it that way, right? Like, it's totally fine. But in the future, I would recommend, because that's in service to the other people in your group, right? Because, people might be like, wait a second, what's going on here? Why does that person have their granddaughter there? That's distracting. I, especially when I'm running a group, want to be really sensitive to those things, because people in a group are looking to the coach, right? They don't want any leaks, and they want their time in the group to be really respected. So I would say, hey, Carolyn, you know what? So appreciate that you're helping your daughter. Why don't you step out, come back on the Zoom call when she gets home? So you'll miss a little bit, but you can watch the recording, and that way we don't get distracted and she gets your full attention. So let me know if that was helpful, and we're going to wrap it up for today, people. Gareth, I have experienced both as a coach and coachee where session length and interval have needed flexibility. Yeah, I mean, great. If it worked, see, I'm all for flexibility as long as the coach, I'm choosing it versus just saying okay. So I don't know if that's helpful. Like, it's fine with me if the person says, well, I need to do it at this time, I'm willing to check and go, yeah, that works. Let's do that. But I'm choosing it versus just saying okay, because that's where the ball is rolling, and I haven't even paused to go, is that really make sense? Is that really of the highest service to the client? So that's the question, okay? Everybody, this was fantastic. I so appreciate the quality of the questions, the participation, and everything. So I'll be back next Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific. The recording will be available, and I acknowledge all of you for your excellent questions about leadership in professional coaching and enrollment. Take good care.